Hi, here's May and welcome to this video, which will be about some Softober illustrations I decided to do. Initially I wanted to do something for Inktober, but when looking for prompts or what to do I got overwhelmed by all the options. I saw some prompt lists, but then also something like Idoltober, Witchtober or Inktober. Maybe I will do something like that in another year. But then I figured out for myself I would want to work digitally, and when doing that I don't want to only go for black and white illustrations. Instead I want to do something with color, and from this I decided to go for this Softober prompt list since the prompt seemed nice, and since I was already going for a colored style, doing it with these was really worthwhile, because often when you go for something with a cute aesthetic, colors are very important. I didn't do all 31 days, instead I picked 12 of my favorite prompts from this list. I did this because I had other projects I also wanted to draw for, and I know that doing 12 illustrations would already help me learn something new from coming up with the illustrations. And I got the prompt list from @bunnykisses on Pinterest. And in this video, which will be part 1, I'll go through 6 of the 12 illustrations. I'll show you a quick time-lapse, and I also, before that, showed you the mood board I created for the illustration, which was always a lot of fun. And for each of the illustrations, I'll also share a drawing tip, which I learned or I applied while I was working on the piece. Now let's start with the first prompt, which was witch, and this is the mood board I created for it. You can see I wanted to go for a longer coat and then also these hand accessoire thingies. And I also had some illustrations of some witches as reference, but then also from this one artist called Haruki on Instagram. He used their art as a reference oftentimes just to get an idea of the kind of aesthetic I wanted to go for, since I really like the use of colors and background elements in their illustrations. And I've also included some fold references, which are something I always find helpful. For the pose I was inspired by this one photograph I had in there, and from this I then went on to create the illustration. And yeah, for witches what's kind of very typical is this witch hat, so yeah, I went with this. And I then also took this dress inspiration and the long coat and so on. And the tip I have for this illustration would be to use patterns or textures on clothes to make parts of the outfit stand out. And also not drawing all elements of a pattern individually saves a lot of time, which depends on the outfit of course. Sometimes when you just have a print you want to be on an outfit, it might be faster to just draw it in the correct perspective on the outfit piece. When you, for example, have one symbol you want to use as a pattern, then yeah, it makes sense to duplicate it or transform it. Overall, the different ways of adding a pattern to an outfit would be that you either draw it yourself in the correct perspective, apply to the pose, you draw it straight on and then transform it into the correct perspective. What you can also do is use an image as a pattern or texture, which I also did in this illustration, and you could also transform this image to fit the perspective, but it's not necessary. It can also look good if you just leave it be. I'll now show some examples of how this is also done in some anime. And for some of these, just the direction of the pattern is changed. It is not really applied like it wraps around the body. And then I went for these blue, purple, pink colors, which are all colors I really like. And overall, this is how the first one turned out. Now let's move on to the second prompt, which was Magical Girl. This mood board is much brighter and you can see there's a lot of pink in it. I also had these references of staffs, which are typical for magical girls, but then also ruffles and bows. And I also had one reference of Sakura from Cardcaptor Sakura in there, which is what I automatically associate with magical girls since it's one of the first anime I think I watched. But yeah, for the outfit you can see I wanted to do something brighter and probably flowy with maybe a skirt, and also include something translucent maybe. I also was inspired by this one yellow, blue, pink dress for the palette I wanted to use on the outfit, and then I also used one image as a pose reference again. I often like to go for photographs as a pose reference. In the illustration I then included a staff, of course, and I really wanted the hair of this character to feel kind of soft, which is why I made it more curly, and I also included some braids. And I had a lot of fun with flowy coat the character wears. The tip for this illustration would be that you can use parallel lines to make a pose or in general an illustration feel more coherent. You can also do this with objects. However, going against this can also lead to an interesting result or help if you want to achieve a rather chaotic feeling. I used this for the direction of the staff and the shoulder. They were supposed to be parallel, but overall this turned out to look a bit weird since I made this anatomy mistake that the left upper arm is shorter than the lower arm. The shoulders just look a bit weird to me, maybe also because the head is tilted in a different. Maybe if I could change it, I would probably turn the head so that the eyes would kind of align with this parallel line of the shoulders, or I would just not use the parallel lines of the staff and the shoulders. And I said before I was inspired by this yellow, pink, blue color palette, but I didn't know how I wanted to combine these colors and which color should be the main color. But in the end, I then came to this result. Now let's move on to the third illustration, for which the prompt was crystals. And in this mood board, I included crystals, of course, but then also this turquoise and purple color palette, which you will see is a big inspiration for the colors I used in the end. I also included lots of hands since I wasn't sure about the hand pose. For this mood board, what I find interesting is that I have these 3 photography poses with these characters that have this kind of very confident energy, which the character also kind of resembled a bit. And I also find that having mood boards just to portray how the character should overall feel can also be very helpful. And I also included some tiaras, which was also something I wanted to include with the crystals. Then in the illustration I played around with using the crystals in different ways as patterns or accessoires. The outfit also has many sharp edges which fit to crystals. The tip for this illustration would be, if you want to make a pose more interesting, you can have the face and the body face different directions. You could also apply this to the angle of the shoulder and the eyes, having them go into different directions. And you can see that I used the tip I gave in the witch illustration, which was that I drew this pattern once and I used the transform tool to then duplicate it on the dress of the character. For the crystals on the jacket, I wanted them to be 3D since, I think it can be good to have a variety, sometimes having patterns that are just 2D printed, but then also including something 3D can make the outfit look more interesting. And now let's move on to the fourth illustration, for which the prompt was love. This mood board looks a bit similar maybe to the magical girl one, with lots of pink and also bows in it. Then we have really a lot of pink and red also, and this overall, I think more cute energy of the characters or people in this mood board. You'll also see that I was inspired for the background by this one image of letters, and the hairstyle was also inspired by this one photograph. In the illustration I then used one of the photographs as pose reference, and the tip for this illustration would be, if you have one symbol as an inspiration for your character, then you can think of different ways in which you can portray it. For this character, this symbol was the heart, since it stands for love, and you can see that I used this heart shape as a bag, but then also for the earrings and the accessoires of the character. The t-shirt, of course, too. I had small hearts in a big heart shape in there, which I saw from one of the references on the mood board. Then I also had the pupil shape of the character be hearts. I also saw this from Genshin Impact, I think, where there are some characters that have these diamond shaped pupils, or I also saw one image of Venti with heart shaped pupil. Overall, the heart, I would describe the heart shape as this rounded shape, but then with a sharp triangle at the bottom. And I also used shapes like this for the outfit. And the shirt and necklace are more rounded, but the headpiece and the fabric tied around the hip have more of a triangle shape. And that's it for the fourth illustration. Now let's move on to the fifth one, for which the prompt was Pride. This mood board featured many rainbow inspired outfits, but then also fold references again. I also had this one card from, I think the game is called Mahoyaku, which I then used as a post reference. You will see that one of the outfit pieces, I just use it in my illustration since I had never seen something like it before and wanted to try drawing this type of outfit. And then in the illustration, the outfit of course featured lots of rainbows, but then also some flowers and mainly rounded shapes. I also had the character carry a flag on their shoulder. One thing you can take from this illustration is to not be afraid of trying out some new things and drawing some things you haven't drawn before. For an example, for this outfit, just because people maybe normally don't wear it doesn't mean you can draw it, unless the goal of your artwork is to be very realistic and close to reality. I also tried out a different kind of hairstyle than I would normally draw with this very high ponytail. Another tip I have from this illustration is the importance of wraparounds, and being able to visualize these will help you a lot with perspective of the human body and drawing clothes on it. The rainbow stripes on the upper arms of the outfit kind of look like them. Just imagine a line going around your arm. It's basically like putting a belt over any part of your body, like your waist, your leg, or your finger. And that's it for this illustration. Now let's move on to the final one for this video, which is based around magic. In this mood board you can see lots of purple, and for the kind of outfit the character would wear, I was inspired by these more formal outfit pieces. I also used this one illustration of Ritsu from Ensemble Stars as a pose reference. I changed up the pose a bit, but I basically copied the hand poses, so credit for these go to the artist. I had this glowing hand in there as a reference, and I also want the character to kind of perform some magic with their hand. And in the illustration I had this chain pattern I used lots of times, but then also this kind of shield pattern for the necklace, but then also as their belt. So I kind of repeated those two accessoire pieces, which can make the outfit look more coherent, like it fits. I also wasn't sure if I should include a ponytail for the character or not. Oftentimes when I draw hairstyles, I tend to separate it into parts. If I have a longer part or maybe some side bangs or something like that, and then I look at which version I like the most. But in the end I went with long hair, and I also really wanted there to be lots of kind of this flowy energy in the illustration, to have this feeling of magic be in there. And the final tip for this video is that if you have access to a brush like a chain brush, definitely use it. I drew each of the chain pieces for the accessoires and the bag and so on, which was pretty tedious and I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it's good to first get an idea of how chains work. Once you know that, it's just repetition. So yeah, if you can get your hand on a good brush like this, do it. And that's it for the final illustration. I learned about all the different prompts I picked and discovered what colors I also associated with the theme, and also what kind of clothing style or aesthetics the different prompts resemble to me. Designing the characters with individual hairstyles and practicing poses was really nice and rewarding while creating these illustrations. Overall, when I look back at these illustrations, I can see many improvements I could make, especially with the faces, which is always the case for me with my art. After a few days I always see some improvements I could make. What I like most about the illustrations are probably the colors and the outfits. If I had to rate all of the 6 drawings from this video, I would put them in this order. You can also comment what illustration you like the most, and also if you have done a similar art challenge or what prompts you would pick from the prompt list. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and if you did, you can look forward to the second one, which I'll upload next week. But other than that, have a great day and goodbye.